Okay, today we're going to talk about finding slope and finding y-intercepts. And I want to start off by looking at this silly little picture about slope dude. Now, when you think about slopes, I always think about like ski slopes, but I'm not sure that a lot of people, or not as many people, ski these days. So we can also think about it as hills, or I know a lot of people like to skateboard. And so we've all faced a hill in our life, even if we're just walking or running. And we're talking about the steepness of a hill or a mountain or a road or a ramp, something like that. So I have this little story about Slope Dude. He looks pretty cool, right? And I'm going to tell you some stories about me when I first learned to ski, or when I go walking. So here we are, Slope Dude, or we're hanging out. We're about ready to go up this hill. Well, anybody knows when you climb a hill, whether you're walking or running or skiing, it's not very easy, and it's a pretty good workout. And so when you go up that hill, you're probably breathing pretty hard, and you're puffing. Well, this type of graph is a positive slope. And that's important. We need to know that if a line looks like this, that's a positive slope. I also want you to notice that this positive slope rises to the right. This graph is increasing or rising to the right. And when we do positive things, that's rising to the right versus wrong. Yes? So being positive, rising to the right, looks like this. Okay, so Slope Dude, he gets to the top, and he is so relieved because he's at the top of the hill. Okay, if you're walking and running up a hill, you're relieved when you finally get to the top. So then, when we go down the hill, that is nice and easy, right? And so this type of line or graph is considered to have a negative slope. Notice also another way to remember it is when you're being negative, you falls to the right. You're falling to the right thing. You're not doing the right thing if you're being negative. We know it's important to always be positive. Okay, so then we get to the bottom of the hill, and the funny story is with me that the first time I went skiing, I took lessons and I forgot how to stop. And so I was going down the bunny slope, and I was going really fast, and I couldn't stop, and so I was zooming. I was going really fast. And so zooming stands for a slope, and M represents slope. We're going to talk about that. Stands for a slope of 0. I also want you to think about, though, the good thing about this is that the 0, or my head, I was still on my feet. I was still on my feet, so I was happy. Okay, and that's going to be important as we look at some different types of slope. So then also in the mountain, Slope Dude, you got to be careful because it's a mountain, and if you come to the side or the cliff, you might fall off a cliff. And you say, oh no, I'm falling off a cliff. And so this is no slope, or you could also call it undefined. And that's because what you're going to see is that we end up getting 0 in the denominator and a number on top. And you can't divide by 0. So see, here's an example, like Slope Dude is like, oh no, I'm falling off the cliff. And his head is on the bottom instead of on top where it needs to be. Okay? So just a silly picture and a silly little story to help you try to remember and recognize positive and negative slopes versus a 0 slope and an undefined slope. Okay, so let's look at the next part. And let's talk about what slope and y-intercept are. And we're going to be looking at this from all the different forms. Slope, we said, is the steepness of a line. We already said that. It is also the ratio of the change in the y values compared to the change in the x values. A lot of times we use a triangle to represent change. So it's the change in y over the change in x. And we use the variable m to represent slope. The y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. So here's just a quick picture. If I have a graph that looks something like this, my y-intercept is right here. It's where it's crossing the y-axis. Okay, at any point if you need to pause the video to write down your notes, then please do that. One thing that's really important about the y-intercept is that the x value is always 0. It is always 0. And so if we were to write the coordinate, it would be 0, comma, whatever the number was for y. An example, this one might be like 0, 4. Okay? Okay. So let's talk about how to find the slope from a graph. And then we will also recognize finding the y-intercept. So to find the slope from a graph, you want to locate two, and I'm going to add exact points. Oh, wait. I need to add that. You're going to locate 2 points with exact coordinates. I did have a space for that. Because we don't want to pick a point that's like floating in between the two lines. We want to pick them where they're right on exact points, and I'm going to show you that. Then we're going to create a right triangle with a rise and a run. Then we're going to write the rise over the run. And then we have to decide, is the slope positive or is it negative? Okay? So let's look at the first example. Okay, so in the first example, I've already given you okay, so in this graph, they've already given us our points. So this makes it really nice. So I want you to see how these are exact points, 3, -1, and 0, -5. Like we didn't pick a point halfway in between right there. So that's good. We wouldn't want to pick those points. We want to pick exact points. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a right triangle. Now you can draw your right triangle above the graph, or you can draw it below the graph. And I know these lines are hard to see. Okay, so we're drawing a nice right triangle. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to write our rise over your run. We're going to count how many we went over and how many we went up. So we're counting the spaces. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then here we've got, I can hardly see this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now this is our rise, right? So it's 4, this is our run, over 3. Rise over run. Now, then that last question is this slope positive or negative? So notice this is rising to the right. This is slope dude puffing up the hill. This is a positive slope. So our slope is simply 4/3. And we're going to leave it just like that. We're not going to change it to a decimal. We're not going to change it to a mixed number. Okay. Oh, and then we also need our y-intercept. Okay, so where is the graph crossing the y-axis? It is crossing right here. Notice the x is 0, the y value is -5. So the y-intercept is -5. Okay, let's look at the next one. And so I don't forget, let's go ahead and let's find our y-intercept for. Do you see where the graph is crossing the y-axis? Okay, the y-intercept is right here. The y-intercept, what is the y value? It is 1. Notice x is 0. Okay, so again, they've already given us 2 exact points. So we're going to start by drawing our right triangle. It can be above or below the line. Okay. And so now we've drawn our right triangle, so let's count it. And I apologize for the lines. 1. Actually, that says that actually it's going to be 1 because that's at -1. So 1, 2, so that's a rise of 2. And then a run of 1, 2, 3, 4. A run of 4. So rise over run, 2 over 4. Now my only question is, can 2/4 be reduced at all? And it can. It can be reduced to 1/2. Now, I haven't asked myself, is this a positive or negative slope? Notice this is falling to the right, so that is a negative slope. So our slope is -1/2. Okay, let's look at the next one. So I've marked the points for you. I just haven't told the coordinate, and good, I'm glad this graph is a little bit easier to see. Let's start with our y-intercept because I think we can see it very easily. We're going to have to actually count. Here's my y-intercept where the graph is crossing. And what is it? 1, 2. My y-intercept is at 2. Okay, draw your right triangle. This time I'm going to draw my right triangle above the line just so you can see that it's okay to draw it either place. Okay, now I want you to count. What is your rise? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then your run. 1, 2, 3. We do the rise over the run, so it'd be 4 over 3. And then is this a positive or negative slope? Hope you said positive. So there is my slope and y-intercept. Okay, last one. Let's look at this. So this time I haven't given you any points. So remember, we've got to pick exact points. So it looks like right here is an exact point. I've got an exact point right here. Looks like I've got one right there. So I want you to know you could use any 2 of those exact points. Any 2 of those would work. I'm going to use I'll do a bigger one. We'll do a bigger triangle. You could do a smaller one if you wanted, but I'm going to use these 2 points. Okay, so let's count our rise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then our run. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for my slope, I'm going to write what over what? 6 over 4. Your calculator will help you reduce that if you're not sure what it reduces to, but it does reduce to 3 over 2. And then ask yourself, is this positive or negative? And I hope you're saying that this is negative. So your slope is -3 over 2. Okay, let's go find our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is at -3. Okay. Okay, the last part is we want to find the slope and the y-intercept from an equation, and this is actually pretty easy. Our equation is going to be in the form y equals mx plus b. We're going to look to see what number is married to the x for the slope. So m stands for the slope. The y-intercept is what is added or subtracted onto the equation. So notice this B right here. B stands for the y-intercept, and X and Y just represent a point on the line. Okay, so it should be super, super easy. Okay, so let's look at our first equation. Y equals mx plus b. So our slope, our m, is 4. Our b, our y-intercept, is negative 8. Simple as that. Okay, the next one, our slope. What is married to the x? What is the coefficient? Negative 3. Our y-intercept, what is added or subtracted on? Positive 4. Okay, next. Y equals mx plus b. The m is our coefficient or married to the x. Our b is what's added on. So our slope is 1/2. The y-intercept is 6. Okay, last one, maybe a little bit trickier. What is married to the x is our slope. Ooh, but there's nothing added or subtracted on. So what does that mean? What could we add on for it to still mean the same thing? If there's nothing there, that means our y-intercept is 0.